The Daily Code Snippet. Making your tables accessible. We touched upon some issues of accessibility with forms. What about tables? There are semantic elements we can add to our tables to help identify the roles of the content of our table. Thead, tbody, and tfoot. This is important especially when you have a long, complicated table with a lot of information. In addition to using the th element to identify a heading in a table, column, or row, we can use the thead element to further indicate the first row as a header row in a table. This is useful to those accessing your table data using an assistive device. It differentiates the header section from the body or main content, which would be enclosed in a tbody element. Any footer information would be enclosed in a tfoot element. The footer of a table should contain ancillary information that puts the table data in context or may provide additional information to clarify the data presented. Here is an example. So here we have a table element that encloses data for a table that has 5 columns. We have a thead element enclosing the first tr row, which has the 5 table heading elements that identify the headings of columns. If we look at the subsequent table rows, we see that the first element in each table row is also a th element to indicate a heading element for each row. And the table itself displays information about pets. It is possible this is a data table for a veterinarian's office. And our foot element, our tfoot, contains a row that has a table data element which uses a colspan attribute of 5. That means that this table data element will span all 5 columns. And it contains ancillary information that indicates that this is only a partial representation of all the demographic data that are included about the patients at this veterinary practice. This code would display like this. To someone using a screen reader, the thead, tbody, and tfoot elements help with accessibility by identifying the header row, the main content, and the footer of the table. Our tfoot contains a table data element that spans all 5 columns using a colspan attribute, and we use an embedded styling to make the typography display a little smaller. Note, the use of the colspan attribute is not recommended for accessibility because by skipping columns, it can make a user using an assistive device get confused because they're expecting data in all 4 additional columns. So if the information can be presented in another way, it is preferred. In addition to using semantic markup, we add the caption element. The caption element is used to describe the table's purpose. This allows users to decide whether they need to read the rest of the table or if it can be skipped, especially if using an assistive device that will read data cell by cell. The scope attribute can be added to the table heading elements to reinforce the role to improve the user's experience. At times, assistive devices draw the wrong conclusion of the role, so the scope provides clarification. The scope attribute has a value of col when it is a header element for a column, and the value of row when it is a header element for a row. So it specifies the top of the column and the first element of a row. So if we go back to our previous example, this is how we can improve its accessibility. So you can see with this new code, we have added a caption that explains that this table is partial patient demographic and owner information. And we have added scope attributes to all the heading elements and have specified whether it is a column heading element or a row heading element. Again, we really don't see a lot of external changes with how we have adjusted our code, other than the presence of a caption and the new language in our footer. These measures help on the back end with accessibility and assistive devices. Using colspan and rowspan attributes allows cells to span more than one column and row. To reiterate this point, it may be aesthetic to sighted users to not see repeated data, but since the information on a table is read to a user using an assistive device, the order helps the user understand to which column or row the data belongs. So if a column or row is skipped, it can cause confusion. So to make a table more accessible, it is preferable to avoid using these attributes. If it is required to use these attributes to present complicated data, then it is preferable to break up the data into smaller related tables that would allow you to avoid using the col span or row span attributes. So if we go back to our previous example, this is how we can improve its accessibility further. Here we have added our footer note to our caption, so the user using an assistive device understands that more information can be requested without having to go through the entire table. And we no longer use the col span attribute, and the table does not need a footer. And here is how it would look. Presented by Designers Learn Code.